Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Turned Out a Punk Splits, a show where we bring back two or more former guests of Turned Out a Punk to talk about what else? Punk music. Today on the show, from the fantastic Radio Raheem Records, from Painkiller Records, and countless bands, and also purveyor of the fine record store Big Dig Records out in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Chris Minicucci, a.k.a. Cooch, is on the show with the greatest vocalist of all time. From the band Poison Idea and from the new solo project Crime Scene, as I said, the greatest to ever do it, Jerry A is on the podcast. Returns to the show for, this is the third time. Cooch's second time on the show, Jerry's third time on the show, and boy, is it a doozy. Cooch is one of the biggest Poison Idea fans I know. Asked Cooch to come on the show. Cooch forgot about it. Remembered, came on the show. So I don't think Cooch had all the questions he would have liked to have asked Jerry all lined up. But that being said, it's a very good conversation, a very fun conversation, a poignant conversation at times with someone who's seen it all. Jerry A is someone who has seen punk from, or hardcore certainly, from its inception. Punk too. He was going to punk shows before Poison Idea. And someone who's never left it. Someone who's always been involved, always been a fan of this stuff, and had some dark years, some wilderness years, and has come through it and keeps coming through it. Recently, Jerry has had some health issues and come through that. So we're sending healing vibes to Jerry A, and hopefully Jerry will be back up and running in some, whatever form Jerry chooses to do very soon. In the meantime, if you would like to support Jerry or you know, just pick up some incredible music, head over to poisonidea.bigcartel.com. You can pick up you go through this. It's truly some of the greatest records ever recorded under the banner of punk and hardcore. Poison Idea are, I don't know, what do you say about this band? Like, they're the greatest. There's no other way to put it. They are a band that just, every time you forget how good they are, you throw on a record and you're like, damn it, they are the best to ever do this thing. So, so head over to Big Cartel, pick up some of those records, and, God, pick them all up. Don't pick some of them, pick them all up. There's so, like, if you don't have Kings of Punk, you don't have a complete record collection. You don't have War All the Time. You don't have a complete record collection. Anyway, just talking about Poison Idea's catalog. We're going to be talking about Poison Idea a lot. Also, by the same token, head over to Radio Raheem Records and pick up some of the stuff that Cooch and Rich have done with that label. Unbelievable reissues, incredible books. We've had a lot of people that have done projects with them on this podcast over the years, and they continue to put out fantastic stuff. Real, like, archival pieces about punk and hardcore. Also, by the same token, Painkiller Records, Cooch's other label that he does with CC and other people. It's a label that also has put out nothing, a couple records I don't like as much as others, but they've put out basically nothing but great records ever since they started way back when. A group of people with fantastic taste, and that is reflected in the records they put out. And I would apply that also to Cooch's record store. If you are in the Cambridge area, head over to Big Dig Records. I got some great stuff when I was there last time. I got the first Bouncing Souls single when they were like doing Red Hot Chili Peppers sounding stuff. I got an Overcast record. I got some Kill by Death stuff. It's a fantastic shop. And as for me, I play in a band. We are called Fucked Up. You can find out more information over at fuckedup.cc. We are currently on tour with The Damned. If you're listening to this when it came out, hopefully we see at some of these shows because The Damned are right up there with Poison Idea. That's one of the greatest bands of all time. And then we will be going to Europe in a couple weeks as well. So check out tour dates over there. Pick up our new single. And that is that. Sit back, relax, and enjoy Jerry A and Chris Minicucci on Turned Out a Punk Splits. Jerry, Cooch, welcome both of you back to the podcast. This is a Turned Out a Punk Splits. And this is like a chance to bring back two people that have been on the show. And for me, it's like a fantasy baseball kind of situation where I have someone that's been on the show and then someone else who's been on the show. And I'm like, I wonder what it would be like if they also had a conversation. And as I was telling you off air, Jerry, not to put you over too hard, Cooch, but there's I don't think anyone else in the world that has been more of a Poison Idea archivist as a fan than Cooch. And Cooch definitely has Yeah, like gotten me Poison Idea records and blown my mind with his collection, and so I'm happy to bring this together.
Cool.
That's great. So Cooch, in the future, then maybe I could contact you and ask you questions because I think you know more about Poison Idea than I do.
Well, I was asking you
Um,
questions
um,
last time I ran into you, so
yeah, well, honestly, one of Tom Champion's roommates, this person who was living with him, um, when we did our demo tape before Pick Your King, he was Tom's roommate in this house that they lived in. He recently contacted me and asked me. He said, "I have three clear Pick Your Kings, four black Pick Your Kings. These this I know if I put them on eBay, they'll take whatever 40%. Would you mind trying to get rid of them for me?" And I don't know what they're worth. I have no idea. So, I kind of just put it up on social media. I was like, oh, by the way, I'm selling these for somebody. And if anybody, so half the people are legit and they'll like, well, what do you want for them? And I go, well, I don't know. What are they worth? I really don't know. And the other half are like window shoppers who
right.
will just go, oh, $100 for a single. It's too rich for my blood. I'm like, well, thanks for contacting me.
If
Feel
you're
free to call me every day.
if you're selling for $100, Jerry, I'll take all of them.
Right.
Well, one of the records was the accused, that first accused with the Xerox covered thing. The Xerox covered,
Martha
yeah,
Splatterhead, right?
the first one, yeah, with like some inserts and all this stuff, and the guys were kind of going deep about the matrix number, and I had no idea. I was like, you know what, and I kept going back and forth, and a lot of people were like, it's 450, 450. Then some guy goes, he's asked me if I sold it yet, and I go, and then I told him the story. I go, you know what? It's such a pain in the ass. It's just I hate doing this. I don't like. For one thing, I'm not a salesman. I don't like. I usually just give stuff away. And the guy goes, "What if I just give you 600?" And I was like, "It's yours, guy. Go ahead." So it's crazy, but I know. I remember the first time I saw $1,000. This woman at a record swap. I heard somebody go, "Can you hold this? I'll be right back." And he ran off to get $1,000 and came back to get the child molester single. And I remember that was years ago. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, this is either completely insane or this is the future. This is the way it's going to be from now on, And now you hear the stories about the minor threat test pressings and
Well, like there's that Charles Bronson record where they go after Felix von Havoc for paying $600 for, is it the Necros or the Fixed Vengeance?
It was Sex Drive.
Oh, it's Sex Drive. Well, Sex Drive still at this point is probably close to 10 grand. So pretty good investment on Felix von Havoc's part.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Definitely. And it's funny, on the back of those records where we put like pay no more than $25, and we were, joking, because we never thought, because now that this person's asking me to sell these records for him, I have some first pressings of the record collectors that say that on the back of it. And I remember taking because we pressed the record, and Tom would go, okay, we each get 10 records a piece. And so I remember taking them down to the record store and 10 red vinyl record collectors and walking out with $50. I was like so happy, $5 a piece for these 12-inch records. I remember like, yes, this is great,
I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated always though by like the way you guys realized that what this was important that early on, canonizing it in a way almost as it's coming out. And I think that's like and I guess everyone probably does this with the music that they love and they grow up with. Like I'm sure there's like a passionate group of ravers that could have the same sort of conversation about rave records, but I don't know how many $10,000 rave singles there are. There probably are some, but like, at the same time, like you guys were kind of, like to tally up the cover of Record Collectors now, like we'd be into, I don't know, like what is that? 50 grand worth of records, Cooch? More like,
right. You got to get the list out.
Gotta get the list. Yeah. Someone cataloged the whole list. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw on the new pressing of the record, Mark from TKO did that. He but there was like 3 records he didn't know what they were, and he couldn't see, just so people were like I say, deep diving and looking at it, kind of, you kind of look away from it to kind of see it out of the corner of your eye. But yeah, there were a lot of expensive records there, definitely.
And to me, it also like, like there's this sort of idea of like what is and isn't punk, and like what belongs in sort of like the punk museums of the world, and like that to me is like that cover. I'm like, okay, here it is. Here's the snapshot. This is the stuff that was important up to a certain year.
Well, in the Smithsonian, how they have the Cro-Mag, the statue of the Cro-Mag guy walking out of the muck, and with the in the museum, somebody should actually do that. Somebody should take Tom's living room and put the blonde twin reverb and the bottles of Old English and get
Yes.
the real records and spread them out, with the all those things. That would actually be a really cool art piece to do that.
That would be also, or it could be an Instagram experience type thing, like they do now with Stranger Things and all that sort of stuff. But one that I actually would pay $30 to go and have my photo taken in.
Well, that's what they did with the when they made that Agnostic Front, like the Roger and Vinny sort of documentary thing a few years ago. The guy Ian that made the film, he like recreated Roger's old apartment in the corner of his loft studio.
Oh wow!
Awesome.
And he wanted to borrow like probably, like we're saying, like $10,000 worth of records to use as props. And I was like, I'll just make you really nice color photocopies of them.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if people will be able to see the Matrix numbers on the Blu-ray.
Yeah, but then we did a funny thing is when I was giving him to him, he came to my house and my buddy was over and we dropped them on my porch and videoed my friend like stomping up and down on them.
Oh man.
And we posted it on Instagram and people went crazy thinking it was the, real like Misfits and like, Antidote and shit like that. So everybody went nuts thinking that we stomped out all these really expensive records.
So when did you, go on, sorry.
Go ahead. No, I was thinking about, when you said that, I was thinking about Vivian Westwood's son burning all that stuff.
Burning all the records, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
funny because it's like, it's one of those things that like, like if I were to die, I was thinking about this today because I have this, God, I'm blanking on the guy's name, but this sort of Newfoundland weird out there kind of glam record that I bought from Pete that Tom used to own, like Pig Champion used to own. And to me, it's like it's a really important record in my collection because it's one of his records from his record collection that Pete bought, and then ultimately I got. But if I die tomorrow, that to my kids is just a random piece of vinyl. Like there's the meaning that we kind of imbue this stuff with is also limited to the believers, and outside of the believers,
right.
It's like worthless, which is amazing, which is why I think I love it even more.
Yeah, I totally understand. There's a couple records in my collection that when I hit the skids and was homeless, I tried to sell them and they were like, I'll give you 50 cents for it. They were shitty records that really nobody likes. They weren't popular, they weren't collectible. And I saved them, and one was what was the one? Well, one's Pink Section, the Tour of China one, the 7-inch.
Yes.
That's one. And the other one is an Agony column. I had it all worked out. And it's English, like post-punk, kind of a punky pop single, kind of like Protex in a way. And Protex, that's that from Ireland on the band that
Good Vibrations.
Yeah, Good Vibrations. Yeah. So those couple records, and I kept those, and I still have those, just because to me those are so special to me, and it's they're special. They're like magic records, and I have those, and I'll never get rid of those. And but what I was thinking a moment ago when you were talking about that, I belong to like a couple chat rooms with like these English punks, these old English punks who are older than I am, and that's, if you can believe that. And the Sex Pistols are like just the end all to them, and the new pressing of this came out on gold vinyl for this and that, and I always say is like, does it sound better? Does it sound better than the old one? It's like, because honestly, it all comes down to the music. I know that it's nice to smell this and to see the Mona Lisa and to think about what it was like for them to at that moment to paint that and to be there. But the music is to cast that spell and stuff. It's and now they're even improving that music. You're hearing things that weren't there. Were there, but you weren't be able to hear them. So it's like I think that's I understand the message is written inside of the 7-inch sleeves and this kind of things. Those are like hieroglyphics from the pyramids and stuff. But it's always been the music. I think.
Well, it's like, yeah, you pick your king, right? And for me, it's records, but for someone else, it's Pokemon cards, and we're probably both laughing at each other and the prices we're willing to pay for this stuff. But at the same time, it's just like, it's just it's an arbitrary choice of where you're going to waste your money.
But what is Pokemon cards? What kind of physical action feeling do you get from those? Is it like, I mean, like are you talking about when you chase those things in the clouds and stuff?
No, they have like a card. It came out of a card game, and there's like
I know that, but I mean, I'm just talking about the music, the music,
No, I'm just saying but for me, yeah, right. Like I'm just talking about the actual idea of record collecting, versus Pokemon card collecting or wherever, like skiing or mountain climbing or like wherever you choose to like scuba diving or like wherever you choose to waste your money. Other than
right. Right. Well, what do you think Tom was? I mean, he's the one that coined that phrase, record collectors are pretentious assholes. He was a record collector. He loved doing that. He would buy those UK sub singles with all those different colored bought the same record, the same record, the Dickies and all that stuff. So what do you think? What was that? What is that about? Is it baseball cards? Is it Pokemon cards? Is that what it is? Really?
Yeah, I guess it's like us trying to organize a chaotic world, right? Like finding a little section that we understand and then trying to organize it and fill in the gaps and, like putting a puzzle together, whatever, you decide that puzzle would be. I like, how many copies of Pick Your King do you have, Cooch? How many different versions?
I don't know, like 10 or 12.
Wow.
Like, when did you first hear Poison Idea?
I think probably like right when I started high school. Somebody gave me a copy of, I think it was Discontent and a Darby Crash 7-inch. And this kid I was friends with that I played music with, like, gave me both of them at the same time. And I was just like, holy shit.
Yeah. Discontent's like one of those records that, like, the first time you hear it, it just like, it hits you in the gut. And there's no, I don't know, there's like no other record like that.
Right.
Like, I really, yeah, we talked about this before, Jerry, but like that song is just like, especially that second verse where you're not even not even saying the words. You're like so angry. It's just like, it's just like, that's perfect hardcore.
Well, some songs, I think they write themselves. That song was always there. Just, it just needed to be, I just needed to like deliver it. It was, yeah, it's just the feeling. The feeling, the anger and the energy was always there. It was that cause and that problem and that, it's just such a fucked up, yeah, that's what that was. It's, you look at the situation, why that was written, and there it is. And that we put the music to that whole, Well,
and last time we talked about it, like I think we even talked about how it's like it's a song that's still relevant,
relevant today.
Yeah, and looking at what's happened since we had that last conversation on the show, January 6th, and all sorts of other like, resurgence of this sort of like ideology in a lot more public way than they used to be around. It's like sadly even more relevant now than it was 2 years ago.
Well, Damian, that word you said, sadly. That's what when you said that, I was thinking if I was to redo a version today to update it, it would almost be like either shaking your head in disbelief or just like crying and saying just like, what the please, people. It's like, come on. It's just like, honestly, it's just maybe it's with my age where it's you live and you learn and you get to the point where and you see this and you just can't believe it. You can't believe it. It's like, honestly, I mean, yeah, I feel like either crying or just laughing like a lunatic, because it will drive you crazy. It'll drive you crazy. It's just like so unbelievable what's going on.
Well, there's like an almost absurdity to it, like watching you see the guy from Mr. Show there, or you see the guy, one of the, obviously a long time ago, former Vice founder dudes running around there, and you're like, this is bizarre. This is like a comedy sketch someone wrote.
It wasn't one of some couple like heavy metal guys there too, singers in heavy metal bands too.
Yeah, the guys from Iced Earth were there.
It's just a real who's who.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's kind of like it's either gonna be a new reality show or like a Gilligan's Island where they put them all in.
I know, like, it's funny because like post Portlandia, I think people look at Portland differently, obviously, but a lot of this sort of like wild sort of reactionary politics stuff, like that's like not so much, I guess, downtown Portland or anything, but that's certainly in Oregon. There was a long history of that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you know what, when Portlandia was going on, I lived downtown Portland, and I lived in the east side, and I just thought it's almost like the power of suggestion. It's like these people were like, this is what's going on. They took a little fringe and go, this is Portland, and I was going, this is not Portland. But people, hey, well, that looks kind of nice. That's Portland. That must be what Portland is. And all of a sudden it became true. That what they were saying, doing, it became true. They made that true, and it happened. And sure, they had the quirky here, the artists, we always have, but man, it just blew up, and it was like they planted those seeds, and here comes the harvest.
It's two punk rockers too. The power of punk, whether it's bringing down American democracy or changing the face of Portland. Punk, it's all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, Jon Stewart, look at him.
Yeah, and also Bob Mould wrote the Daily Show theme song.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the original one. I don't think they use it anymore though. But yeah, it's a deep cultural path. One thing you kind of brought up last time, though, I don't think we talked about too much, it was you love no wave stuff, and obviously the No New York comps on the cover of Record Collectors. But what was it about sort of the dissonance of that kind of stuff that drew you in more than like some of the more anthemic-y stuff that was happening at the same time?
I couldn't understand it. I didn't know, it was the unknown, and it was scary, and I didn't understand it. I mean, I could, like the Ramones and that kind of stuff, I knew, and the Sex Pistols were even kind of really snotty, but I knew where they were coming from, and I thought that's cool. I can relate to this. But the no wave stuff was just like mind blowing. It wasn't as mind blowing as like, say, Captain Beefheart, Trout Mask Replica, because that was even too far to me, or Sun Ra or something like that, which I couldn't like. I listened to it, I'm like, I don't know what this is. I have no idea. But the New York stuff, I seriously, it would scare me. It would scare me, where I would think it was like these people are like serial killers. It sounds like so scary. It was, I would look at the picture on the back of the record of those people, and it looked like you went to a mental institute and opened the roster and looked at the pictures of these people, like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I was like, oh my God, these people are they're playing music, and they're just like, these people are just like whoa, and it would physically scare me and put us where I'd kind of have to like turn the record off, So that kind of stuff is great for a kid to listen to. That's like where it evokes a feeling of just like fear. I was like, wow, this is dangerous. And then so I jumped into that one. That was, of course.
You really do kind of get that from talking to people that were around in New York at that time. There's just like this sort of, people were scared. Thurston Moore talks about how freaked out he was by like Lydia Lunch and James Chance and those people. Like they were freaky.
Yeah. That's, great. Good for them. That's, that's
But so that menace in music, in that sort of that threat, and like I think obviously you're with the fire breathing and the blood, and there's sort of this like performance art quality to Poison Idea, but there's like a real menace there too. Like that's the difference I think between punk and some other sorts of performance art type thing, is that there's always sort of this idea that it's grounded in reality. This threat.
Oh, it's like Monica Zaza just passed away recently. This artist is the performance artist, and I saw him when I was really young, like 15, and it was that kind of things too, where it seemed dangerous. I guess it was art. I guess it was a performance, but to me, it looked like somebody going absolutely mad, and with urine and whatever, and throwing before Gigi Allen did it, and not set to music, but it was that kind of stuff. I guess if you, I mean, whatever, like Karen Finley or whatever, if you go there to bring that and present that as a piece, some people might think it's whatever, pretentious stuff, but to me it was scary and it was dangerous, and I like that kind of stuff. I like that, and Poison Idea thing, we were kind of firing on the id, just the now, and we didn't understand what we were doing. We were just kind of channeling our fucked upness, all of our, like, Tom's bad childhood, my bad childhood, all of our bad, and we were just channeling that. There was I don't know if I told you last time, but there was a time when we were playing and it was just so crazy that one of our first shows with the crowd just going completely, the 50 people there going completely berserk, and us going berserk, and the music was so loud that you could actually almost see the waves, because I remember I used to have to wear 2 sets of headphones to practice, because I could just see the waves of the air moving. It was so loud, and just the tribalness of the stuff going in. And Tom said, he goes, I looked over at you one time, and you were like jumping off like a side fill, like jumping into the crowd. And he goes, I saw you, and you like levitated for like 2 seconds. You like moved and you like levitated before you hit. He goes, it scared me, and like almost stopped playing like that. And it's kind of just, like I said, this stuff is so, it's I can't explain it. I can't,
that's how they built the pyramids, right?
That's supposedly, that's what they say.
Levitating the stones, yeah.
Yeah, they played Pick Your King and levitated the stones into place.
Yeah. That's what, that's a rumor.
So time traveling, Poison Idea loving aliens.
Yeah. I was down, since I talked to you last, I went down to the pyramids in Mexico and saw those, and I saw some sketching I did a long, long time ago on the wall.
What, and down there?
Yeah, some sketching in my past life.
Did you guys ever tour Mexico?
We went down once in the 2000s and did Mexico City. We played one show in Mexico City, and it was we had like a bad person managing us, and it was kind of this person was also doing a bigger band, and the people of Mexico didn't want to have us, and he was like, well, if you want GBH, you got to take them for one show, and then you take them as a kind of like a charity case, and I'll give you GBH. And we went down there, and it was kind of like a rock place where it cost, for the average kid, it was like $100 or whatever, but it was a trip. I love Mexico. I love it. Since the last couple of years, since I don't see it through a touring eye, and I just get into the culture and the history, it's because I used to like hate Paris. I used to go to Paris. I'm like, oh, I hate Paris. It's like, and my wife, she's like, well, why do you hate about it? I'm like, I have to chain my luggage to my leg, and I have to do this, and I have to She's like, well, and so we went there as like a tourist, and the history. And I never knew that there was actually a city in the middle of Paris, which was the old city, and they built it around this river. And to me, it was just like, a place where you go in a club, a club in the catacombs, and to stop and smell the roses, as they say, it's a whole new trip. So yeah, Mexico now, to me, it's like the people down there are just, they're like some of the the salt of the earth, man. It's great too. I love Mexico.
Yeah, it feels like when you go and tour as a band, it's like a real lesson in how to hate a city. Because you're like, people ask you like, "Oh, what was Venice like?" It's like, "Oh, the show was terrible," and that's like your
Yeah,
takeaway
right.
of being in Venice.
Right. And what was Venice like? Feedback.
Yeah, yeah, the sound was not good. We got in late. I didn't sleep well, and then we were up super early and didn't see anything.
Yeah, yeah. That's so to see the. Have you ever been to the pyramids in Egypt before?
No,
No.
no, like like once you're in a band, you don't really get to go on vacation too much, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like every time's like a tour, and I feel bad because like my kids, like I'm trying to do it more with them now, but no, I've never been to Egypt.
Well, Chris mentioned it. That made me think of it because I was
No,
like,
I've
that's
never
one of
been
the.
there either.
Yeah, that's it. You ever been to the pyramids of Boston before?
Yes.
Have you been to the Pyramid Club?
Yeah,
The
I think
pyramid,
so. Oh yeah, you guys played there in the 90s, right?
the Pyramid Club in Boston?
No, in New York.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was a great place. I love
Yeah.
that place.
It feels like those '90s shows would have been like a real kind of like changing of things. Like obviously, like hardcore begins to change a lot stylistically throughout the '90s, and things get slower, things get a little heavier in certain places and stuff like that. And it feels, like as a fan at the time, I was definitely more enamored with the older school hardcore and the stuff that eventually kind of comes back. But what was it like kind of touring in the '90s? And were you seeing that happen firsthand?
Um, I just went back recently and started reading like a bunch of old Slash magazines, and the whole feeling of reading that the way you just by reading the words of the reviews of the records and the way they see it, and the reviews of the shows, the letters. I mean, in the Decline, when Kickboy reads that letter from the people, it was a whole different. It was I've said this a million times about the hardcore coming in and stuff, but I think what really turned me on in the beginning was just the search and destroy stuff with the magazine, with the Amos Poe and Burroughs and David Lynch and Charles Bukowski and the Dadaists and Situationists and all this stuff. Being a little kid and being a dropout and not going to school and being schooled by this and being people tell about this is art, this is fashion, this is music, this is culture, this is this. It was not the norm. It's not what they taught you in school. And that was punk rock to me. That was, and then the music was the soundtrack to that. These people, whoever it was, the pop group or Gang of Four, you know, they weren't my favorite bands, but the soundtrack to all that stuff. And it was, I think I love the aggro and the aggressive because that's, like I said, I was always firing on the id. I was always upset and always mad. So that's what got me off, and that's what we listened to, and that's what we lived. But to deep down in your soul to think of, why we're doing this, that's what did it, is the creativity and stuff of it. It was completely, it was a whole new. I love the hardcore stuff. I did, but it got to a point where you'd go to a show and see five bands, and they all were the same. The same thing again. And if you can go to a show and kind of predict what they're going to do next, what this, the break in the music's going to be, when it's predictable like that, or whatever, it's just, it kind of just, there's nothing left, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I guess it's like you said earlier. Well, kind of different than what you said earlier, where it's so much more than just the music. Like obviously the music is what's driving this thing. That's what's bringing us all there. But it's like a cultural, especially in the beginning, like a completely a cultural shift. You brought up Vivienne Westwood with fashion. You know, you look at all the people that got permission to make culture and made film out of it, from like Nick Zed to Jim Jarmusch to like just all these people that kind of got like permission to do stuff out of this sort of thing that changed everything.
Yeah, I understand that, but what, like, say, like the the We Got Power compilation with like 60 bands on it. What was what was their message on all those, every band you listen to, and what are they trying to say? What is the culture on that? It's just like
it changed, yeah.
Yeah. There's no really message there. It's just the same thing over and over. It's just, and then, like I say, I know the anger, that was great. That was a great outlet to, there was nothing like that. If you could have like put that in a bomb, it would have fucking taken care of, it would have leveled the world. But because it was so powerful, but it was kind of just all over the place.
Well, I talk about this a lot on the show, but I always look at punk as being this sort of like double helix of sort of this highfalutin art school kind of culture, and then street rock and roll. And 77, these two things kind of align. And then as it goes on, or 76, 75 maybe even, but then as it goes on, they get further and further apart as hardcore kind of starts. And then you look at how far removed sort of, I don't know, art music got from everything again. And then it kind of like with Nirvana and post kind of that world, you have a little bit more of a convergence again, where it became like William Burroughs and Kurt Cobain talking about, loving beat writers and zines and that sort of culture arising again. And then it sort of, once again, kind of separates as time goes on.
Yeah. I mean, it comes and goes. It goes in waves. It goes up and down. Everything does. It goes like that, it comes up and down, and it did, like, a couple of years ago too, with the thing in Olympia too, with like that band Gloss coming up when it needed to be said, when it really needed to be said, and then it ebbs and flows, and it's always done that, and that's what it should do. And I think we're looking for that next thing, we always are.
Speaking of Olympia, how mind-blowing is it that Kathleen Hanna went on tour with you guys way back when?
I must have been sleeping through that one.
She was with Fits of Depression on a tour with you guys. You guys did a short tour with Fits of Depression, and she was roading with them.
Okay, yeah. You know what? I remember. I think Fits of Depression might have stayed at my house once. So Kathleen Hanna might have stayed at my house once. That would have been something. So like I say, talking to like Chris and stuff, and thinking about records. To be at that time with so many things firing off, it's like I say, it's like the movie Rashomon. 20 people see one thing, but everybody has a different, they see a different thing. So I remember Fits of Depression. I remember being with them. I remember hanging out and talking to them. I remember seeing them, but I remember playing with them, but I don't remember like
who was on tour with them. Well, it's understandable. A lot of stuff happened.
So Damian, tell me about this. Tell me what.
I don't know. Toby Vale was on the podcast and told me this, and it blew my mind. It was really like, talk about like a convergence of two cultural forces in the Pacific Northwest. And I'm always fascinated by these interactions different people have. Like you're talking about Rashomon, like I think Nirvana's like a great one like that, because in the Pacific Northwest, there's, obviously people that were like, oh, they're one of the greatest bands ever. But then there's also kids that were, like Nate from the Foo Fighters, who was in Diddley Squat back then, was like, yeah, they just sounded like Led Zeppelin to me. And and I think it's amazing how, like, everyone's got a different take on all these things.
Yeah, sure, yeah. And there was so, like I say, there was so much going on. There's like every day there was so much stuff going on. And if you caught something, some people did, some, it's what you saw. It's like, so I remember, I liked those. I liked the Olympia bands. I liked, the one band that's still playing. It wasn't Sissy Face, Bratmobile.
Bratmobile, back together, yeah.
I liked them. I liked them a lot. I remember seeing them at the X-Ray Cafe in Portland, and I remember like going right up to front to watch them, and I really enjoyed them a lot. But then, you know, I do remember seeing Bikini Kill once too, and I liked them, and I remember walking up to the front of the stage like at this show, and it was, you know, a lot of people there, and people just going, you know, I remember hearing this, like, you know, and you fucking guys can just, you know, get the fuck to the back and, you know, get all this, and screaming at me. And I'm just like, what am I doing? I'm here like supporting this music, and I'm watching it, and all of a sudden somebody's screaming at me like, you jocks, you big jocks, get the fuck out of here, and blah, 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 all this shit. And I'm like, what did I do? Where am I, you know, where am I at? And I'm just like, I'm here supporting this show, and I don't know what I did. And people were like, boo, get out, like that. And I was like, okay, you know, I know. So yeah, I see. That's my Roshman. I remember that. I was there.
It's interesting because I think in certain places they had that kind of reaction where they had the crowd on their side, but then there's other stories you hear about them playing, like you're talking about Gloss, like talking about a band fighting an uphill battle at that point, like pre-Riot Girl being like the Riot Girl band. There some crazy videos and shows that they play where the audience is just going at them.
Right. Well, see, that's I respect. I've always, when I've heard about that band, I loved them right away, and then I was just, the reason I brought them up because I was just playing that record the other day.
Yeah.
And so that's, you know, yeah.
It was wild. I went and saw them on the reunion tour, and just talk about how
I didn't even know they did a reunion tour.
Yeah, Bikini Kill's on tour. I guess they just wrapped it up.
Oh no, I thought you were talking about Gloss.
Oh no, Gloss. No, I don't think Gloss will ever be doing another reunion tour. I think that's over. You know, there's these bands that kind of happen at this moment. It also feels like this moment in particular, like hardcore music, whatever your definition of it, you know, it's probably more popular, or certainly more mainstream awareness of it than it's had, God, in a long time, maybe since the initial wave.
Well, right now?
Yeah, like Turnstile and God, I'm blanking on every band's name right now. But there's just shows with like thousands and thousands of kids going to see these bands now, and it's, you know, like it might not sound necessarily like the Germs, but in some cases it does, but it certainly is sort of a direct descendant of.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. That they have to do something, and you know, my personal, I like all the Razor Blade and Aspirin bands that they you know, I get that magazine and I look at it and I'm like, oh, what is, and I Google them and find out what they sound like, and there's a lot of stuff I get turned on to, but some of it, like you mentioned some stuff, I'm not gonna like repeat the name, but some of it I'm just like, wow, it's like kind of like I don't know, what could I don't know. It's like, you know what? If you can't say anything good, don't say anything. So it's like what it is. It's kind of like I don't know, kind of like a Grand Theft Auto of music, you know? It's like it's like yeah, I'm not it's like you gotta do something. It's kind of like Tony Hawk's fucking rock and roll, you know? It's like good.
But it's interesting you bring that up, because that's probably the musical discovery point for a lot of kids these days, right? Would be, you know, I heard the Adolescents on the Tony Hawk. I know this because kids come on the podcast, adults now come on the podcast all the time and talk about hearing punk for the first time on the Tony Hawk game. Like that was the introduction to this sort of stuff. So the relationship to it's going to be so different than, well, like yourself, like someone who's having to like scrape every little bit of information and find scraps and put the pieces together. It's going to be a totally different way of experiencing it.
Well, you know what? If they really, if it really touches them, they'll look into it and dig deeper and find out where it came from. And you know, like people who, like kids who really were into Led Zeppelin and stuff, and finding out where that, you know, it's like you know, where they stole all their music from. Like every song.
Cooch, I don't mean to be dominating this conversation. Anytime you want to jump in on it, if you have any questions, I just feel like I'm power talking.
Yeah, you can keep going.
Okay.
As needed.
And the camera switches over to Chris and he's sleeping.
No, he's lying in wait like a snake. He's gonna come in with these questions when I'm least expecting it and get ready to trump me on all of this stuff. He's also you can fact check me at any point, Cooch, if I come up with something that's not true.
All right.
When you moved to San Francisco, Jerry, was like the Fowl record stuff still looming? Like were the fuck ups and verbal? Well, obviously verbal abuse goes on for a long time, but like was that sort of because like you hear a lot about that the menace of that scene.
The menace of like the band, the menace.
No, the menace of the fuck ups, like how they were like the bad dudes of San Francisco.
Oh yeah. Well, you know what? It's like when I turned 18, I was in Portland and I heard that because Oregon was one thing, one government, and California was like if you lived in California, you can get like welfare really easy. Once you're 18, just say you're unemployed and they'll give you money to be a bum, to not have a job. So I went down to San Francisco because all my friends were down there, and I got on welfare right away, and got a hotel. They give you like vouchers, but they make you get up one day a week and go sweep streets at like 6 a.m. And that's fine with me. Just stay up all night, go to shows. And San Francisco had shows all the time, like every night. And so I went down there, and that's what was, I caught the end of the first wave. I remember going to a party and being there and seeing like Sally Mutant at a party. And like just like going, whoa! I used to have that picture of that girl. That's from the Mutants, and I was a fan because I had that single, that New Drug or whatever it was. Not Insect Link. Was it the single? I had the single, and so I was just like, I was like a fan. I loved the Mutants. I loved the San Francisco stuff because it was so different. Everything like the Nuns, Crime. Some of it was like Crime wasn't my favorite band. They were kind of sloppy, but the Mutants were great. I love the Mutants. And so I got there with the punk stuff, because the fuck ups were from Society Dog. Were they before that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was okay, you're right. Society, and they had the Sid Vicious guy, Sid Terror. So right away, you're come on, right away. It's like some guy dressed up like Sid Vicious, and every town in America had one. Every punk scene in America had a Sid, right?
The worst
like,
punk.
I know there was one in Seattle. I know there was one in Portland. I know there was one. Every town had every punk scene had a Sid guy, right? A Sid guy.
We still have one in Boston.
I think there's one in every town, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, I mean, it must have been, I don't know. What would you rather have? Like, I guess I'd probably rather have like a Johnny Cash in every town, or but
there's not too many punks. I'd prefer. No, I think I'd still prefer a G.G. Allen in every town to a Sid Vicious in every town.
Wow, that'd be something. And then the Dead Kennedys, like, hope you get drafted, that song by the DKs. But so I went down there and I got on welfare, and then I got my hotel room, and I I was like a kid. I was like 18, and so I got thrown into that scene, and I kind of like swim or sank, and it was like I didn't want these guys to like fucking kill me, so I was just like hey bro, and but they're nice guys. I knew all those guys. I hung out with all those bands at the Vats. And I caught the end of the Def Club. That was still not the Def Club, the Tool and Die, excuse me. The Tool and Die was still going on. And I saw a few shows there. So all the, Code of Honor stuff was still going on. And
did you ever see Sick Pleasure?
No, never saw it. Okay. But I knew Nikki was, I think, already in verbal abuse by then.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Was Negative Trend still going, or would they have already kind of become
Flipper
by that point? Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember seeing Flipper graffiti in Portland because Bruce had some ties to Portland in the like 80, and he would come up to Portland and graffiti Flipper shit all over Portland back in the day. And I remember being a little kid seeing he's like, Flipper will never play Portland, fuck you, and stuff like that on the wall. I was like, who's this? What is this? And then I heard about Flipper. I was like, oh, okay, well that makes sense. So, but yeah, the San Francisco stuff was pretty there's that one Sick Pleasure video where that cat's cutting his chest, and they're dancing around, and, whatever. And you could tell like half of them are on speed and stuff. And that, to me, that the hardcore scene of San Francisco, that's kind of pretty much was that in a nutshell right there. That was pretty much, I mean, I don't want to badmouth that because I love a lot of those people, and a lot of them got out of it and are still alive. But it was pretty, yeah, tough. It wasn't like LA where it's all spread out and you could, it was a little teeny city, a metropolis with a lot of, I was there and I got like, saw, people get fucked up and guns pulled on me and, just crazy shit. So it was like Boston or New York, if you lived down there. So yeah, San Francisco was crazy.
Seems like there was like a hard drug kind of vibe to that scene early on compared to other punk scenes.
Yeah, there was. I mean, they love Johnny Thunders down there, Mm-hmm. That stuff with the guys walking around with like the fedoras with the syringes stuck in them and shit like that. That's like kind of a fashionable junkie type thing. But San Francisco was unlike like Seattle, which was really into dope. San Francisco was really into speed. There's a lot of speed guys down there that like to do speed. And I don't know if it was just the economy or the availability or what, but
well, sick pleasures, speed rules okay.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. That was. I couldn't play that fast.
When I heard about you going to Portland for that time, I'm interested in the same way, like, the DC guys, they always talk about that trip that they did as the Teen Idols to LA and seeing punk in LA and then bringing that back to DC. And that really does change the East Coast, like their response to what they saw in LA and kind of getting tougher and going to these shows in New York and Boston. Like, you really do see how that spreads. Did you bring anything back from San Francisco to Portland? Like, did you see anything in that punk culture that you're like, okay, we need something like this here? Or is it more like, shit, let's hopefully it doesn't get this bad?
I brought a pound of speed back and I turned everybody on to speed. No, I think Portland was already, people could think for themselves. We had a bunch of like, everybody was into rock and roll here in Portland. And that always, yeah, I know that story about those guys going to DC and doing that. And I always wondered about that because I knew that didn't Harley go to like Europe with the Stimulators, and he came back like with his head shaved and stuff. So I mean, that wasn't really too. You're talking about the slam dancing and stuff, right?
Yeah, the slam dancing and even like the organization of people in the pits. I guess it would have been like the sort of early hardcore gang stuff, but like just sort of like the way these guys came in en masse and stuff like that. And then you hear about the DC guys showing up in New York and Boston and sort of like, and Detroit too. And just sort of like, bringing this sort of like, well, hardcore, like what West Coast hardcore was.
You know what? The thing in Portland was a lot of the kids looked towards Los Angeles and emulated the skating thing, even though it was like really wet and, it was wet here in Portland, but they liked skating. All the kids were into the dope and stuff. They didn't. I mean, for some reason, Seattle was always kind of a drug town. Like I said, they loved Johnny Thunders there, and there was a little bit in Portland that like that kind of stuff. But Portland was a healthy young. Like they like to skate and they like to be physical, and they drank and stuff like the LA guys. But I didn't. Me and a couple of my friends, we after the San Francisco thing, we had we kind of did almost like a quasi suicidal type thing where we had like insignias on the back of our coats. But I mean, these guys couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. They were just like really just really fey guys, and it was just they weren't strong guys, but we did it as kind of like a joke. We would hang out in packs because we were like they were too nerdy to have girlfriends, and that's what guys do, is like but no, it was fun. It was I didn't bring any, I was joking when I say the speed.
It's funny though, you bring up that Harley thing. I totally forgot about that, but yeah, that's totally, he gets his head shaved by the guys from the Outcasts, I think, according to the legend, and then comes back and shaves everyone's head. And that's sort of like the introduction of American Skinhead. That's sort of like, that sort of a cultural learning that happens when someone goes away and sees something on tour. I guess this continues in punk.
Yeah, because I remember the skinhead guys coming up from LA to Portland in like, you know, 80, early 80s too, like bald guys, bald punk guys. I was like, whoa, what's this? Like, it was kind of crazy. So,
Yeah.
and they had that whole, the skinhead thing. They called themselves skinheads. They weren't punks, they were skinheads. And that was a new one, you know?
Well, it starts factionally off, right? Like hardcore kids, skinheads, post punk. Like it all just, at one point it was all just, I guess, punk.
Right. And now it's just forget about it.
Well, not if this podcast has anything to say about it. We're putting it
Yeah,
all
right.
back under the umbrella. That's my entire life's purpose.
That's fine. That's the way that's the way I live. I always have, you know.
I read an interview recently where you talked about how, I think it was in No Echo, and you talked about the original inception for the book, or maybe it was in Razor Blades and Aspirins, but you talked about how the original inception for the book came out of conversations with Adam Parfrey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that, and rest in peace now, he's passed away, but like that seems to me almost like another offshoot of punk, that sort of Feral House, and I guess that's sort of like a holdover from that sort of Search and Destroy, or like that's not a holdover, but that's sort of like where it kind of goes, the Search and Destroy style of literary sort of punk rock or literary cultural stuff.
Oh yeah. I mean, Adam's stuff all that stuff he did in Feral House, the old, you know, all the apocalypse culture and stuff is dangerous as, you know, is anything today. And he, you know, we hung out. He was a good friend of mine, and we hung out, and he would, you know, tell me stories about going to the Mask when he was young, and he would, you know, just tell me these stories about LA all the time and say that like the Germs girls, he would say that he'd have a different name for them. I'm not going to say anything here, but he'd say the Germs women that would follow Darby around. They would like kind of like pick guys out. And I can imagine Adam when he was like 19, 20 years old. I can imagine, you know, and like him, and they would like he said they were like, what did he say? They were like something really funny, like ferrets, like attacking him. They were like one was on his leg and one was like smacking him on the side. One and they like beat him. They were like these girls would like attack him and like beat him in like these like shows. And he says he was like, yeah, I go to these shows and the Germs girls would like attack me and like like try to like beat me up and like they'd be on me and like these little short little little fat girl to be like kicking me and stuff. And so he was a riot. I loved Adam, and you know, so we hung out a lot, and when he moved here, he was getting into his drugs, so we did a lot of drugs together, and we would drive around and party and stuff, and I would, you know, drive by a corner and go, oh, that's where so and so got shot, and you know, this is where this happened, that house burned down there. I remember this, and he would, you know, I'd tell him stories, and he was like, you need to write these things down, you know, and I'll put them out in a book. And I was like, really? So he bought me a laptop and said, go for it, and you know, start writing stuff. And that was, yeah, he's the one that kind of, you know, told me to do it, write my stories down. And then it kind of changed, like everything does. Everything morphs and changes, takes on, you know, a whole new thing. So, but he was definitely I would have just kept going and been like the tribal people, they're like passing stories on through song over the years, you know.
I think that the What We Do is Secret book that they put out, you know, it's interesting hearing that side of like his take on the Germs thing, because that was the first place that I was kind of exposed to the idea that for people that lived in LA, Germs have a bit of a conflicted legacy.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, the it was, you know, it's I think of it as a whole different. Yeah, it was a church almost, a weird, just so dangerous, so crazy, and everything. And I say that in the book I wrote too. It's like these people came up from. I remember hearing about that, and then the feeling these people are like, yeah, these people were on the run. They murdered somebody in Los Angeles or in San Francisco, and they're like the Germs people. And I just remember like going. I was a kid. And I'm just like, wow, these are like these. This is insane. These people are like criminals, but they're a part of this band. They're in. the crew of this band, and it's just like this, yeah, and the singer is this, and they do this, and it's all this with the, you could just feel it's kind of like with the Turbo Negro people tried to play their music and like pose on stage as like, this is who we are, but they lived this stuff. It's real. It wasn't like, makeup. It was like, this is the darkness,
Yeah. Well, that's when you read that book, that's what really comes off, is that there's a darkness in that Germs book. Like, we're like, this is like, so that might be one of the most bleak, like oral history books.
Yeah. And to have the spillover and to meet these people and kind of just like, it's like, again, it's kind of like the no wave stuff. Just like, you can't understand it, and you just feel the vibrations coming from you. You're like, yee, it's just, scary shit. So, of course, the kids are drawn to that kind of stuff. That's what,
Well, yeah, look at Gizem, right? Like, Gizem is kind of the same sort of vibe, I think, for a lot of people here. Like, looking at that, it's.
Yeah, of course. Danger,
Yeah. You can't say the name. I remember in Japan trying to ask people about Gizem, and it's like, no, you don't say the name. And I'm like, oh shit.
Really?
Yeah, it was like, I don't know, it was like, it kind of explained to me, it kind of sounded like Candyman or Bloody Mary, right? Like, if you say the name too much, it might like evoke him to come to the show, and you'd have to, I obviously I'm a huge fan, so all of this stuff just like, much like the Germs thing, much like all this stuff just feeds into the legend.
Yeah. Jerry, how did you find out about Gizem? Was it the Peace Comp?
No, Pusshead, you said, right?
Yeah, Pusshead. Him and Tom were good friends, and Puss lived in Boise then. And honestly, when the record that what came first, the Peace Comp or the record? I think the record came first, didn't it?
I'm not sure.
I think the LP comes out 82, and then the Peace Comp's 83 or 84?
Yeah, because I remember the record coming to Portland. There was a couple copies of it floating around at different houses, and honest to God, I didn't care for it when it came out. I thought it was too metally. I thought it was too, because right then, think about the timeline, what was happening at that time. It was like the punk, the agnostic front, the East Coast, the hard, that kind of stuff, SSD, and I was just like, I would go into a house, they'd be playing that, and I was like, this Judas Priest type shit again. I was like, what is it? Because the guitar to me sounded like, kind of with the tone on the guitar, it sounded almost like a Fast Thin Lizzy, Judas Priest dual lead guitar thing, and I was just like, and it took me a while to, I saw the graphics and stuff, and I'm like, okay, but then it kind of hit me all of a sudden. I was like, oh, okay, now I understand it. It took me a while to sit down. Not a while, but maybe a couple months. But right away, I dismissed it. When I first heard it, I totally dismissed it. I was like, eh.
What did you think of like Slayer and Metallica when that stuff started coming out?
Well, it was kind of, at that time, it wasn't cool to like that stuff. It was like, it was all heavy metal and stuff. And we were like, but then, then, like I say, if you honestly sit down and listen to it, give it an honest listen, it's good stuff, and you're like, yeah, this is good stuff, So,
but I can see the divide you're talking about. Like, I can see why it wouldn't ring in the same way that, like, I don't know, the Germs would ring. Like, I can see why, because it is more fantastical based, it seems.
Yeah, and it just seems, I don't know. You kind of think about, you see things and you're like, where did this come from? It's like, well, they're, it's like these people are professionals, and you don't like things that are good. You want to, it's like, yeah, it's almost too good. It's almost too good. But Metallica was, yeah. After this stuff grows on you, and I probably like Slayer now more now than I did when I heard them the first time,
Yeah, I can see that. I can see, like, after a certain amount of time, you're able to kind of like distance yourself from some of these things, and they lose what you found so offensive about them, or maybe they gain offensiveness in some cases, but
yeah. And you know what? And it's not just it's the people who like them too. They always ruin stuff for people too. It's like, it's like, that's why I don't like a lot of stuff today that might be good, just because the other people who like it, I don't like them. It's like people ruin everything.
Yeah. Well, I think that's also probably part of the appeal of international hardcore is you don't have to experience what the band shows would be like. You can have this perfect image of what these shows would be like.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I do it every night.
Yeah, exactly. I think like in the early parts of the early 2000s, it seems like it's almost like a different band or like a different Jerry fronting Poison Idea as it would have been sort of the back half of the first part of the 2000s. Is that fair to say for you? Like, I mean, specifically, there's like that show in Austin you guys play. There's a couple like shows where I don't know, like, maybe I'm just projecting on this thing, but it seems like you weren't as happy to be up on stage as times I would see you later on in the 2000s, where it seems like you found that joy again on there.
Oh man, honestly, Damian, I wrote that in my book. I said that there was a time where we were just kind of going through the motions, and seriously, wasn't even atonement. I just hated it. I hated it, and I felt like we were stealing from people. I felt like I was ripping people off. I felt like I was letting people down. I didn't want to be alive. I didn't like being up there. The whole thing was, like Sisyphus, man, rolling a rock up a hill. And it was, I guess it's, what my fate, what was laid on me, but it was miserable. It was totally miserable. And that's why in the last 5 years, I've been so goddamn happy, is because this shit was lifted off me. And it's, yeah, it was bad. It was a bad trip. I got so deep into drugs, and doing the tour of the world and copping drugs in every city, or in some of these bad, like, some places are bad, like, Oslo or Berlin, or some places like Tokyo and stuff where you could like be thrown in prison and shit, and trying to do stuff like that there was just, it was, and I knew for this is like everything I did, you can do anything you want in life, but just stand up for what you do, except for what you get, the consequences. If you want to go out and do whatever, you can, but the consequence, you have to accept that. You have to accept that. And I was there. I was going like, I know what I'm doing, and I'm ready to face the consequences. And it was bad, and I just knew, because I was hoping, kind of like, I always thought in the back of my mind, I always thought that Flesh Eater song, one song where he has the line, expecting to end but marked to live, because he's just like he's, you can't. I thought if I was to jump off a building, I'd break my spine. I'd be laying there paralyzed the rest of my life. It's like, this ain't gonna happen. It's like not gonna happen. And yeah, the show in Texas was just we played with the Saints, and I was just like one of my favorite bands, and I was like so miserable because I had to get up the next morning early and take a cab across town to some place I didn't know where it was in Austin, and go to a methadone clinic really early in Austin, which I wasn't, so it's like all these new things. So yeah, I was just, like I said, I was just stumbling through one like a nightmare to the next. So
was it getting away from the drugs? Like, what was the turning point for you when you kind of realized like this is, like, because we played with you, and it was just after you had to have your toe amputated on that European tour. You told me like you had like, or nearly lost a toe or something, right? Like something
like three, yeah, bones and a couple toes, yeah.
Yeah, it was like just after that tour, we played with you in Portland, and I remember talking to you, and you were unbelievable that night on stage. You were so good, like just like it was amazing. So it feels like there must have been. Was it just ups and downs, or is it like as you kind of get further away? Because by that point, you introduced me to the term Hollywood sober that night, because we smoked pot afterwards, and you're like, "No, I'm Hollywood sober."
Honestly, you know what? It's weird that you were. That's because that's when I remember being in Prague and going to the hospital with gangrene in my leg, and thinking I need to do something. because this can't go on because they made me sign a waiver that said, you know, they're going to take my leg off.
Holy
and
shit.
I was like, okay, well, fine, you know. And then they made me sign a waiver like, if you happen to die on the operating table, we're not responsible for it. Yeah. And I was like, okay, well then I need to change something now. This ain't gonna work anymore. And that was kind of the turning point right there. It really was. And I was like, I need to get my shit together because like I said, it's like I tried and tried to, you know, extinguish this light, but it just wasn't. Somebody else had other plans. Something had other plans. It wasn't going to be me. I couldn't do it myself. So there's a reason why, you know, they kept me around, and so that was weird because that was it. That was it. Getting my my little piggies cut off.
Well, and not to be Dr. Phil about it or anything, and if this is too much, don't worry, I can edit this part out. But like, do you think it's survivor's guilt at that point, or like what made you want to just kind of like do it? To is it addiction? Like you're you know, like you're saying, when you go and find drugs in some of these places, it's like Russian roulette.
Yeah, but that's, you know what, that's that stuff, and fixing it up and cooking it up and going through all that shit. That's part of the thrill too. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that was part of the whole thing too. The lifestyle and shit, and you know, the running and gunning, and you know, people, you know, now this world. I'm glad. God, I'm so glad because now it's just so out of, you know, it's like people think it's a video game. Like I say, it's like Grand Theft Auto. It's just like so crazy, and the drugs are so insane, and you know, and it's weird because what I'm doing, it's like in the last 4 years, you know, we played to the last show. Uh, I told the guys, I go, I want to play 1 year and just kick ass like we used to. I want to go out there and play 1 year of shows and just basically apologize and for playing shitty shows for 10 years for like drug money. So we went back and you know, I was sober, got sober, except I drank. There's my cocktail app. So we drank. And so but we went back and we smoked. We didn't play one bad show. We did Japan, we did Europe, we did, you know, and then we stopped. And then 2 months later, COVID kicked in. And then right then I started a payee business to like take care of, manage people's money who are homeless, who couldn't, like street people and homeless people who were on like Social Security, who could manage their money. And I was working with the government, and like taking care of meeting people on the street, and, you know, giving them their checks. And with COVID, it shut down everything. So I couldn't meet anybody in person. And the bureaucracy made it so insane. I was doing it for like a year, but I was getting to know these street people and these homeless people and drug addicts. And I was sober. And it was really heartbreaking because these people were just so hopeless, and and I was like trying to help these people. And at the same time, bureaucracy was sticking it to me, and they're, you know, making it impossible for me. So I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to try to be like a peer support counselor, where I'm on the street talking to people. If they need resources, if they need to get sober, if they need to get their shit together, I want to have the services for them. I want them to get help. I want to help these people because, you know, they're good people. They're good people. They're all just, you know, and like in Portland right now, the whole city is insane with fentanyl, and it's going crazy. But you know, everybody thinks it's all these criminals ripping off Home Depot or whatever. And you know, I talk to cops. I'm talking to cops. They're like friends. You know, I did a record with a cop, and he's like, there's like 40 bad people from the, you know, 40 that keep getting arrested over and over, and the DA's just let them go because that's the way it is on the West Coast. But these other people need help. These other people need help. They want to get off the street and stuff. So that's what I'm doing. Last week I was downtown in Mission cooking for people, you know. So it's like it's crazy. Where, you know, it's not over. It's not over. Things keep happening, man. It blows my mind. It really does. What happens in life.
Well, and you're seeing it firsthand, so you probably know better than I'm going to sound just talking about it. But like just from touring and being around, certainly in Vancouver and the western part of Canada recently, it's like these super opioids are it's like a different thing. And obviously, I never grappled with heroin addiction, so I'm talking to my ass when I say this, but it just seems like the way this is kind of interacted with the drug using population is something completely new.
Well, when Reagan was in, they cut all the mental health, support with all they closed down all the. It also these drugs they have today, it with the psychosis, with the speed and the fentanyl, it's like there's got to, you ask yourself, why is this? Why would they allow this to decriminalize poison? And a poison that's so addictive, it's like they're putting this fentanyl in speed, in cocaine, because you do cocaine one time, two times, and now you're addicted to cocaine because it has fentanyl in it. Because you want that, you can't go with, it's not like you can sleep it off and just, but now you want that, you need it because you will get physically sick. And it's not, man, there's something so wrong with this stuff. I mean, I used to be a thug and a piece of shit back in the day, but this is like nothing like I've ever experienced. This is like so bad. It's like something out of like some kind of, you know, science fiction, like horror stories. Like, why are they doing this? What is this about? It's just like crazy. And you know what? If I can just, change, and I have already just changed a couple people that are just like so sad and so fucked up. And I work with them and help them. And that's, like I say, it's like atonement, and it makes me feel good. And I help them, and I don't ask for nothing. I just make them just save a life, and it's just that's all I'm trying to do. Somebody saved mine somewhere. I don't know who did it, but somebody saved mine, so let's pay it forward.
Mm. Yeah, it certainly seems like out of any band, like Poison Idea was a band that definitely, and you've talked about this, like drugs were something that kind of like seems like it was part of the band from the very beginning.
Well, yeah, because that's helped us cope. I mean, that's what we grew up with. And when Tom passed away, I went into his house and took all of his notebooks and his guitar and his stuff so I could keep. And I went through his notebooks, and he was writing some heavy stuff. He's a very, very sad person, and he came from a bad childhood. And so, so that's what we did to ourselves, medicated ourselves so we could, get up in the mornings, So.
Mm-hmm. Who were some of the most extreme performers, like to pivot to something a little more, well, a lot less heavy? Who are some of the most your favorite extreme performers that you've seen, like in terms of front people? Like, like did you like was Gigi Allen something that you were like, this is ridiculous, or is that something you thought had valid?
I never saw Gigi in person. They came to Portland, and I was too busy getting loaded myself. And Tom and Mondo went down there and brought him a bunch of speed or coke or something and drugs, and they stayed up and partied with him all night.
There's a famous photo of that, I think, actually.
Oh yeah. I could smell that photo, But I was like, I'm not. Yeah, I was doing my own thing, Yeah. So, I don't know. It's there's you can tell, and it's funny because like today kids can tell too. They can tell when shit's fake. They know what it's. I remember seeing this band in San Francisco when I lived down there, and they some English band, and they came down in their nice track suits, and then went backstage and put on all their chains and their cod pieces on, and went out there, and we all. And it's like, wow, these guys are like, they look like bikers, on stage, but they're, also these scruffy, biker looking guys on stage, but they're just like, so I don't know. Most intense people I've ever seen. I don't know. HR was crazy in the day when he was going nuts. Nobody can hold a match to him. I don't know. Chai Pig was insane. He was all over the place. Trying to think of my head's going like a map. It's going down. So places I'm like trying to pick up people. You know what? like some people, like Gary Floyd, just his man. When he sang, it was like a gun hitting you. It was just like this force. You could feel the force. There was different people all over. There was different.
Did Butthole Surfers go over big in Portland? Like, were they a band for you guys at all? Or?
Their first tour up through here, and yeah, and they just went. The first time they came here, there wasn't one person that wasn't, didn't testify. They just blew the roof off the place, and I remember the party afterwards, and yeah, they were. I remember seeing the show. It was like the early '80s, 13th Precinct, and it was a good show, and they were, yeah, they did it. So
they're like one of those bands like yourselves that people like just to this day talk about, like, oh yeah, you should. When they came through, it was unreal. Like the time you guys played the Siboney here in Toronto, people still talk about.
I remember that show. That was with the 5.5 reasons for actor abortion. The bunch of fucking goofs guys.
The BFGs, yeah, they were probably there. But I think you played with Flight Camp.
Yes.
And Ashes to Ashes. And Flight Camp, one of the guys from Flight Camp winds up producing Billy Talent and all those bands. So.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But we played with Steve Goof's band, the Retroactive Abortion Band, whatever it was called. He had another band called like something 5.5 Reasons for Retroactive Abortion.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, now I think I know the demo tape.
Yeah, and then we went back to the Fort Goof, and I remember they were all. I remember I was trying to get cocaine, and they were just like, you're acting like a rock star, and I was like, no, I like it, it's good. And they were like, we don't do cocaine here, and
that's like lighting up a joint in the Minor Threat House.
Yeah, that's right. I should have gave them a call. And I remember, like I said, I remember getting stabbed in the leg with a piece of glass. It was a really long piece of glass, and because I was pushing the crowd back, and I either fell on a bottle, or because the weird thing is, it was one blade, like, probably so long, about this long. And it wasn't like a bottom of a bottle, but I remember pushing people back from the crowd, and I was kind of like laying on the crowd, and I just felt this thing in my leg, and I pulled back like that, and I looked, and there was this little teeny edge sticking out of my leg, and I went and I grabbed it and I pulled it out. And as I pulled it out, it went all the way in, and then I just looked at it, and all of a sudden this like dark blood just started just pouring off of it, just like pulling like a waterfall. And I was like, oh shit, like that. And then we kind of we duct taped it. And I went to the Goof's house, and the dog was going crazy on me. It smelled that blood because my bottom leg was soaked with blood, and it was going nuts, trying to like eat my sweats or whatever I was wearing. And they're like, oh, it likes you. And it was licking my leg, and so we like I say, we taped it up and didn't do anything about it. And then a couple days later, it just got so infected and so huge, it exploded on the road, and exploded with like this infection. And it was so fucking. I still got a scar where if I move my foot one way, an indentation goes in about an inch, and if I go the other way, it pops out. It's like party tricks. It's like, watch this. Boom, boom, boom. It's like this.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine a less sanitary thing than a Fort Goof dog licking your open wound.
Yeah. Oh, they were saying too. They were going, "Oh, the dog's mouth is the most cleanest thing in the world. Hey, let him clean it for you. Let him clean it. They're very clean mouth." So I was like, "Okay, all right, sure." I was like, I'm drunk. I'm like, oh, that sure sounds believable. Yeah.
I've watched dogs. Like you watch dogs, they'll eat garbage. They'll eat poo. They'll eat vomit. Like,
yeah, but once it hits their mouth, it magically just turns to hydrogen peroxide.
I forgot about the cleaning properties of a dog's mouth. That is awesome. Cooch, you want to ask anything?
I don't know. Can we segue into some record stuff or something?
Yeah, let's talk record stuff. I want to talk that Count Vertigo story you're telling us off air too, Jerry.
Yeah. Is there any way I could run next door for just a second?
I like that. That store's sick. Have you been to that store, Jerry? Joint Custody in DC? Oh, it's a cool store. The vibe there is really neat. Cooch's store is amazing. Next time you're in Boston, let's talk some record stuff because, as I said, Cooch has got some cool stuff on for show and tell too. But Jerry, you're talking about a Count Vertigo find score.
Yeah, it's like when was this? Well, I don't know I forgot when that Count Vertigo single came out, but I remember there was this place on Sandy Boulevard in Portland, a record store. I've talked to people since, and they remember the name of it. That's a little independent record store that had a bunch of stuff in, and right next to a liquor store. So I wasn't 21 yet, so it had to have been before 1983, probably 1982, and 83, 82, and we went over there and we would shoulder tap and have people buy us alcohol. And
you guys call it shoulder tapping too. No one else calls it shoulder tapping. That's what we call it in Toronto.
Never heard of
it. Well, you go, hey, you, buy me. So, and we got like our booze, and we went in the alleyway, and we're sitting there drinking, and this record store shut down. So they took a shopping cart of vinyl and just rolled it out. I guess they were throwing it in the dumpster, all their vinyl. So we're over there looking through the stuff, and I got a sealed box, and I ripped them open, and they were big hole 45s, about 50, I think 50 per box, because I know they were 100, and they were the Count Vertigo 45s without the sleeve.
Yeah.
So, because we were drinking in this alleyway, and there was a street, and then there was the freeway over this, and we would drink and we'd sit there and we'd like throw these records, and they would bomb. And I don't think we ever hit a car, but they would hit the freeway as cars were driving by on the freeway, and we were chucking them. And we had these Count Vertigo 45s, and we're throwing them at the freeway, bombing cars that were going by as we're drinking off our 100 proof vodka, bombing cars. So,
damn,
yeah, and then,
literally throwing money away.
And then a couple of years later, I lived in an apartment building downtown Portland, and Count Vertigo lived downstairs.
Oh wow, what's he like?
Well, he
was like rest in peace. I
was
think.
like he we lived on the 4th floor in a 5-story building, and we hear people up on the roof some nights howling at the moon, like really late, like 3 a.m, and we didn't know what it was, and we talked to people, and they go, "It's that guy down in that room downstairs." And he would literally be howling like. And so one night I went down there and was like creeping around listening, and it was kind of like Psycho. I heard it's like, mother, like, "Don't you talk to me like that, Jeff." And it was like, oh my God. And he was talking in both voices. Behind this door, and then it scared me. It actually scared me. I was like, and I was like a scrapper back then. I was like, geez, this is so. I left, and I was scared, Count Vertigo. And then about a month later, because he was just kind of spinning out of control by that time, and the sheriffs came and gave him an eviction notice, and he sealed himself in. He sealed himself with boards and sealed himself in, and would not let the cops in there. And sealed himself in this room, in this little apartment building downtown Portland, and be screaming in his mother's voice.
Wow.
Howling at the moon, screaming in his mother's voice, while the cops were like trying to serve him papers. And he was like, so it was quite the trip.
That record just got even more interesting to me. That is, yeah. Wow, that is, yeah, like it's, well, I guess that's the thing is like all different sorts of people were drawn to this thing, people that needed punk and people that, maybe not necessarily balanced in their terms of their mental health and
of course, I've howled at the moon so many times, and there's this, like I say, as my book says, there was a time where I was to that point of just like far beyond that. So it's so, it's like, yeah, it's. Yeah, it's the last big bang here, and it's still going. I'm so lucky to be part of to grab that new wave, surfing on that new wave when it happened, because it's the last. There hasn't been anything like it, any youth movement since it's the last one. I mean, can you tell me?
No,
Yeah.
no. Well, I guess there is stuff, but it's not like this was, right? Because this was like a complete democratization of culture, where
Around the world.
Around the world, exactly. And as long as you had economic means to do so, you brought this up actually last time on the show, and it completely changed the way I look at punk history when you were talking about how certain scenes are better documented than other scenes because people had economic means to buy video cameras or pay for records, and if you didn't, you had to find alternative ways to pay for these records, and pay for these being in a band because it costs money. So as long as you had access to some way to get economic means or access to this thing, the world was your oyster. You could write your own ticket.
Oh yeah, definitely. So Chris.
Yes.
What do you got in your bag of tricks?
I was going to pull this out before. I thought it was relevant to the conversation, but I don't know if you can see this. So this is one of my copies of Darby Crash, but it says, "Give me your drugs," signed Jerry A.
Well, that's my writing.
Yeah.
So it's 10 out of 80?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a sign, right? Is that the second or fourth edition, right, on blue?
It's the blue one, yeah.
I think that's the fourth press.
Yeah, so you know the story about that, that's the Darby Crash.
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say the Pick Your King. You know the story about the Pick Your King, the black and the clear ones.
Yeah,
right?
Malcolm told me the story one time.
Yeah. So
broke my heart to find out that story because I waited forever to get a clear one and finally got a clear one only to find out that it's the second press.
But you know what? But the clear ones came first, and we had glued them and everything, and we put all the love into them. And the second, and then the old ones came back, and we're just like, let's just Xerox his sleeve and slap and throw them out and get them out there.
What's the story? Go on, Turkus.
Oh, I was just gonna say, the first time I met Malcolm and he was telling me about all this stuff, and he was like, "Well, me and Tom just bought like a ton of cocaine and stayed up for a whole weekend and glued all those sleeves together."
Yeah, this person I was with the other week, same thing. He lived with Tom and the guy, the dealer. We all did that. We had like these sessions, and it says like you think you do 1,000 sleeves, but you really don't. You do like 100, then you're like tired.
Yeah.
Until the next session,
Yeah. What was the story behind the Portland edition of Kings of Punk?
That's the Pusshead one, right?
Yeah, there's a Portland edition that has 2 posters and 2 stickers, and it was like a Portland exclusive, I believe, or something, right? Is that the story, Cooch, or something?
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, that's the one that the Pusshead made for the, because Tom, we thanked all those bands on that, on the poster, and Tom, that was before Screwdriver turned into like what they became, and they were kind of, I'm not sure what single came out about that time. Maybe it was Back with a Bang. It was one of the ones that they weren't full on. They didn't do the bad one, right?
Yeah,
the bad single yet. But anyway, Tom thanked. I think he thanked. Is Gigi Allen on the poster?
You'd have to look.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Well, Tom thanked. I remember Puss had censored 2 people. Tom said, he goes, "I want to thank Screwdriver, and I want to thank," I think it was Gigi Allen, and Pusshead wouldn't do it. And Tom lost it. He got really mad because he's like, "This is censoring," And it was like, if you, I mean, they had like Hank Williams and Orson Welles and all these people that, but these are the people that influenced Tom, and he, he liked that record. He liked that first record. It's just a bad rock and roll record, So.
Well, it's like I guess it's a completely different lineup from what they would ultimately become. Same with Gigi Allen. Obviously, Gigi Allen in that period versus the Gigi Allen at the end seems like it was a slightly different person as well. But
sure, yeah.
I guess when you're, I guess when you're at Maximum Rock and Roll and you're kind of around those circles back then, you realize like, yeah, it's probably better just to censor this.
Is there ever a time that's better to censor anything?
Well, I think the Gizem reissue, they took off the swastika, and I think that's one of those things where it's like, this might cause more headaches than brings people to the record. There's a band from here, Legion, that had a record one time, and the album cover had some demon on it, and then Jesus licking its hoof with a crucifix up his ass. They could not find a printer to print it anywhere in the world.
Well, when we put out the Inmates LP, the place that we used to do the posters wouldn't do it because it said like "fuck off Jesus and Mary" or like something really, offensive to some people, pretty tame, like in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
Walter from Imprint called me and he's like, "We got this real holy roller," he called him, "over at the print shop," and he's like, "And they won't run that job for you."
Well, the idea. Sorry, on Jerry.
No, you see an opportunity, start a printing plant that like welcomes all blasphemous material.
Yes. We'll print anything.
Yeah, there you
go. Where did the idea to kind of start signing these records come from, too? Because there's a couple different Poison Idea records that had signed editions.
A lot of them, seems like.
Yeah.
I don't know who would be the first band to sign records. I know we didn't make it up. We probably had something that was, I have a signed Clash record. I have a signed Generation X record.
But they're not like an edition. Like it wasn't like the Clash being like, okay, there's going to be 100 signed versions of this record on this color of vinyl or numbered this much. And we're going to, like there's a couple different records that have this sort of like signed edition type thing. And I can't think of other bands that did that. Now I can think of more bands doing it, but like back then.
Yeah, like the live one with the signatures over the passports.
Yeah.
I don't think we set out to do that. I don't think we set out to do it. We just kind of felt like we just did that. I don't remember signing and thinking that we just kind of did it as we were like signing them. That's just, I don't think we like really thought that through. It's just something that came to us.
Well, because Punish Me,
it's a whole new thing. Now I'm thinking about that. I'm like, did we actually think about doing that? Did we think about?
Well, there must be, because like there's like the one that Cooch just showed, and there's also obviously the Punish Me one where there's all different, how many members sign it varies, but there's always like a signed of that version of that record, the first press, and numbered. It seems like, like that idea that you're talking about, like folding the sleeves, like that's a way to have that sort of, I don't know, like that authenticity touching the hand of the band type thing. And
well, maybe that's where it came from, because I think one of the first times we saw that was from like the all of the like the Process of Elimination thing and those fixed singles. They're not fixed, but Negative Approach, where they would sign the inside of them and write stuff.
Yeah.
So that just taking it,
Yeah, because it's so cool. Like I love, obviously, like Cooch and I are both, massive collector nerds about Poison Idea records, but there's just something so neat about that being a thing. And like, yeah, it's like there's not too many bands doing it. Like obviously bands are like writing on the sleeves, but the idea that like, this is something more than that.
Yeah. So Chris, let me ask you, there's one record that I've heard about before, the Pusshead, the yellow flexi disc, the Japanese flexi disc.
Like the one that comes with the Japanese LPs?
The Poison Idea Japanese flexi yellow. Do you have that?
No.
Yeah.
That was like, it came with like Cleanse the Bacteria Japanese edition or something, and I just never bothered to pony up the money for one.
Yeah, that's the one. I've never seen it. I've heard about it. It's one of those, one of those things you hear about, but you never see it.
It took me forever to find the Babes in Toyland split. Oh, not the Babes in Toyland split. There's like an Australian only split, right?
Yeah,
Cooch?
That was it.
Yeah.
Babes in
The
Toyland.
Babes in Toyland yeah.
What a strange, it's like when you see those old, like, like whatever, like Pink Floyd and, like Tom Jones or something,
Label sampler.
It's like that same thing. Babes in Toyland and Poison Idea. It's like, wow.
Well, you're also on a split 7-inch with Nirvana.
Well, that kind of makes sense.
A little closer to home, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But Babes in Toyland, it's funny when you talk to the people from Bikini Kill, you talk to a lot of the people from Seattle. It seems like they had a real tight connection to the Seattle scene. I guess less so to Portland.
Nirvana?
No, Babes in Toyland.
Oh yeah, well they did that Sub Pop thing, and they were it was like Minneapolis and Seattle was kind of like there's always been the Northwest and Minnesota a lot of like Norwegian giant, back and forth. It was like from the settlers days, from hundreds of years ago. They would, like, we have like relatives in the Minnesota right there, and they go west, young man. And so yeah, it's we've always, I mean, from like Laughing Hyenas, Urge Overkill, Babes in Toyland, all the replacements from the first tours. They would come to the Northwest, and they would, Husker Du. I mean, they came here the first time, and Portland and Seattle, and they stayed here for like 5 days. And they came to Portland, just like loved it. It was like a home away from home. So we've always been. There's a lot of places. I think like Boston and New York kind of does that in a way. They're kind of,
Well, I know, and Olympia certainly, and Washington D.C. have that kind of connection as well.
Definitely.
And it's funny, that first Husker Du tour, there's like a website you can see all the shows they ever played. And it seems like they went to every city and stayed like 3 or 4 days, including Calgary. Oh. They did 3 or 4 days in Calgary, Vancouver, Portland, as you said, Seattle. And it's a fascinating kind of thing to watch them do this tour. And then they come back, of course, and they've brought back this sort of hardcore sound with them, much to the chagrin, I'm sure, of some local people.
Yeah.
Oh, Cooch, what else you got in the box?
I don't know. What do you want to know about? What do we need to talk about?
What do you got test press wise?
All right, let's see. All right, so here's Pick Your King test press.
That's wild.
That was from Malcolm. I think it belonged to Tom previously.
So is that signed? Is the label signed?
No, all right, so yeah, I think this one's just blank.
Okay.
But it has like this homemade sleeve with it.
Uh-huh. Have you seen that? Have you seen the one the with the label signed?
It's like, right, this is like delving deep into my memory here. I remember like maybe like in the beginnings of eBay, someone sold the test press and it said like it had a whole bunch of stuff that you must have written by yourself. And it sold at the time for like $100, which was more than I, would have ever spent on a record in 1998 or whatever. So
yeah, I wrote something like to my friend Tom, and I signed it, and it said all this shit on it. This is our first record, blah blah blah. Yeah, that record mysteriously disappeared from Tom's house and wound up. We kind of have our theories who took it and where it went, but I saw that one. I saw that one time, and then you know what? It was like years later, after Tom passed, and I was like, that's where that went. That's the record. What, so
I think I'd have to get in touch with, I think it's some kid in Detroit has it. It might be like a friend of a friend.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if it sounds better than the other records.
I don't think it sounds
well, then, go on.
Somebody else, Jeff Nelson from Minor Threat sold one on eBay that had like a really lengthy note from Malcolm, and it might have had like him buying wholesale copies of like Discord singles and stuff. But it was like, here's the record we're putting out, like check it out and let me know what you think. And that's awesome. Sold for like thousands of dollars or something. And then after that, Malcolm hit me up and was like, "Hey, this guy I know wants to sell this copy. Do you want it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I was going to Seattle to visit a friend at the time, so we drove down to his house and bought a bunch of records from him.
Wow. Yeah, like I say, I totally understand, because I have that Protect single and
Right.
that Pink Section single, and it means something to me. But it's about the music, and we're putting together the stuff with me and Mark now, and me with American Leather, doing the things, and each one's a work of love, and I like creating these things, and I like presenting these and giving them to the world and stuff. And I can see that at one time that must have the first Pick Your Kings or the second Pick Your Kings or the record collectors, they were what we did, and we sent them out there, and they were but I don't know, when it comes down to it, it is the music and stuff. But I dig the art, and I always love it, and it's cool to.
Mark sends me like copies of all the records to sort of like beta test before they come out. He's always hitting me up for my opinion and stuff. So
well, he's doing a great job. He's doing a really good job on this stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. It's good. It's finally, I don't know. It's like, obviously you guys have had records come out, but as you talked about before, it wasn't always under your discretion or by your choice in some cases. And so to have these records come out properly now, and kind of these authoritative editions of stuff, and to have all this stuff in one place, it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, some of the mixes, like on like Tang or whatever, or some of these things are just so, cut corner, just sound like crap, and and then the finals it's I don't know, it's nice to like have some say into it and put some quality.
I remember I bought one of the I think it was like the last Tang version of, I don't know, Record Collectors or whatever, before Mark started doing this stuff. And I thought it was like a low point for him, where the center label of the record was like an ad for his label.
Oh, that's amazing. I want that edition now.
I don't even know if it had like the Poison Idea logo on it, but it was like, for more Tang products, like www.
Wow. Reminds me of that Smith song, that Death at One's Elbow or whatever. It's like that song where it's like throw in a tacky badge and whatever, repackage, reissue, rebuy, this and this, and it's just like that's what it reminds me of. It's just like the guy's more worth more dead than alive. Just keep fucking putting out the same stuff and repackaging it, and throw in a button, throw in a sticker, free T-shirt with this and that. It's with the same quality, just keeps just going, Xeroxing it over and over, so it's diminished more and more. Just
one of my Protect single in my collection, I guess, would be my RKL record. That was an edition that Doug Moody put out, signed by Doug Moody.
Nice.
He's still alive.
I should start doing that. On American Leather, I just got the new Dissension from LA tonight. I listened to it, and it sounds crazy. I'm like, wow, this sounds like old punk from the 80s. You guys are really, really from Long Beach, and I'm going to put it out, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to start, when the records come out, I should sign them all myself, even though I have nothing to do with it at all. I should put them on the front of it.
Well, I think that's like the Sub Pop style too, right? Like where it's like, make the label more important than the record. Make it like the label sells the record more than the record sells the label. Right.
Sure. Well, that is Sub Pop. Yeah. I'm going to Seattle Airport. There it is.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't have a Matador store in the New York airport in LaGuardia or anything.
Maybe there could be a Tang record store at Logan. I don't know.
There's just to get away, there's the Rejected Test Press, which has is it a different mastering job, Cooch, or a different mix?
I don't know that any of the ones that are rejects I've ever been able to tell the difference.
I listened to them. I think there's I thought there was, but it's been a long time since I did a side-by-side comparison.
Again, I probably haven't listened to these records in a million years. So
yeah, is there any other Rejected Test Press with different mixes on them or different things like that?
Oh yeah, I know one.
Record Collectors, right?
Yeah, that one.
And getting the fear?
Well, there's one of the Beast Goes East. There's a thing where Tom's guitar is completely out of the mix.
Oh yeah.
Oh, whoa.
And it sounds like, yeah, it's bad. And so we had to fix that. But there's a couple that, I mean, you know what? We're releasing new records now, and it's like subliminal. We put like way in the back. I'm like whispering. I'm like, so it's you can't really hear it, but it's.
I want to mix with all that and push way up to the front. Just your
Yeah, cut everything back and put a disco beat on it. So.
What's the story on you guys catching someone bootlegging the record and taking all the copies? Is that a story? Like, there's something like there's a 7-inch bootleg, which I guess is maybe the same recording as official bootleg, maybe not. But like, you guys caught the bootlegger?
Oh, you know what? That sounds. There's so many weird things like that could have happened. Which one?
Is it this, Damian?
Yeah.
Now, is that this double 7-inch or the?
That's
that's
the bootleg. But I think the double 7-inch is maybe the same recording, or
it's a bootleg 7-inch of the Plastic Bomb cassette.
Yeah, you know what? Like I've gone into record stores or been on tour and played festivals and seen that kind of stuff, and I just asked the guy, I'm like, "This is mine. This is a bootleg," and sometimes they give it up, and I joke about it with other things, like the guy who made our socks. I said that, I go, "This guy bootleg," but I was totally in cahoots with him. It was together, but it was so funny because Poison Idea socks. I'm like, that's so, but those, yeah, I've done that. I've gone to festivals and seen Poison Idea bootlegs and just taken, the couple copies they've had, and what are they going to do, But that I remember I've done that a few times. It's not like
what I'm thinking. Yeah, it's the Plastic Bomb. We got the beat, and there's a version that I guess the bootlegger did first, and then there's a version that you guys sign and number. Once again, back to that sign and numbered edition thing.
Yeah, like I said, I've been stores before and seen bootlegs, and what are you going to do? I've got pissed before and done that. I remember an old time when Alchemy owed us money, and we went into when Victor worked at Rough Trade in San Francisco, and we went in there and had somebody wait outside and kind of like shut the close sign, and just kind of bullied them. Walked in there and said we want our stuff, and the people didn't know it, and we started kind of like breaking stuff and acting like assholes, and it was bad. We were bad people. We went to the record store, and there was like 6 of us. One guy waited outside, and we went inside and said, "We want to talk to Victor." And they're like, "He's not here." And like, "Well, this is our stuff." We started taking stuff, and people started knocking shit off the shelves and walking around. And they're like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" They're like, and we started kind of like trying to be tough guys and just intimidating them. And we want our stuff. And we left. And by the time we drove from San Francisco to Portland, he left a message and is like, "You have your master tapes, you have this, you have, everything's on its way. Don't worry." So we paid him. It's just, I'm not proud of that stuff now. It's like stuff you do when you're young and stupid. I think it looks funny on movies and stuff, but in real life, people, get affected by it. It's like just intimidating people. It's like, it was makes for a good story.
Well, and it's also just like the reality of, this is, like you're not going to hire a lawyer and go after this guy in court, like there's
it's just like, basically it's like taking the bootlegs again. Same thing.
Yeah.
It's like going and taking the bootlegs. That's what it kind of comes down to that. If you boil away all the fluff, the end result is doing that, So why not cut away all the, to begin with and get to the action? And that's what we did, you know.
It's interesting now where like bootlegging has become such a part of culture, you know, like it's just like established that people bootleg, but like, you know, fuck the bootlegger was definitely written on a bunch of records I have, or, and, you know, like the stories of taking the records from bootleggers at one point, it's like, it was looked as theft.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's, yeah, you know what? I know people who do that and stuff, kind of. And it's, all this, I mean, it's, I have no opinion on it because it's, what are you going to do? You know, I have my own opinion, but I'm not going to like spew and start going crazy right now because I think it's fucked. And I think artists need to be paid. And I think, you know, no matter what it is, no matter what it is, me and my wife just went on a thing last night about that, about this person talking about how it all should be free and all this stuff. And the only people who say that are people who've never worked in their lives and never had to, like, you know, it's, yeah, I think, you know, I don't know.
There was a band from here that Maryland's Vitamins that was going to put it a tape that was like, gas don't run on hugs and records aren't pressed with good intentions. Or vans don't run on hugs and records aren't pressed with good intentions, or something to that for extent, you know. And it's like, that's the reality. Like, you know, it costs money to produce this thing, and, you know, unless no one's really getting rich off it, and the idea that like you're going to take something away from the person that made it is, you know, I think that's something that I think I can understand why people think it's fucked.
Yeah, I mean, I could, you know, we could take these live Jack White or live Metallica or live whatever tapes and press them up and make money off them, and you know, people think, well, they're already millionaires, so why should they care and stuff? But that's, you know, it's like, where do you draw the line?
Well, and they will sue you. They will come after you in a way that they won't even just shake you down at the record store. They'll shake your whole family down for everything. Maybe not Jack White, you know, or maybe not Metallica personally, but there'll be a lawyer involved.
Okay, I'm going to take you up on that one. Let's see about that.
Let's see. I wouldn't want to come up on the wrong side of Jack White. We all know how that Von Bondi situation ended.
Yeah, my lips are sealed.
I met Jack White one time, and he was ripped. Like, it was like, whoa, this guy is ripped. It's crazy. You don't assume it.
Yeah,
but man, yeah,
I heard
pro wrestler.
I heard that he grapples with Carrot Top.
I was just about to say, I saw Carrot Top in Vegas one time randomly in a casino, and he was fucking jacked.
Yeah, because like, can you imagine how much times that guy gets fucked with? You know, like back to that Bikini Kill story we're talking about. Like, imagine how many times Carrot Top gets fucked with to a point where he's like, you know what? No more. Yeah, come at me.
Who would fuck with Carrot Top and why?
Chairman of the board. That movie.
Leave him alone. I mean, you know what? I live in a city where that band, excuse me, the movie Jackass came here and filmed a bunch of shit, and they said, the people, the whatever his name is, the you know, Jackass.
Yeah, Johnny Knoxville.
Johnny Knoxville said, Portland is the only city we've ever been to where people will just come up to you in a bar and want to fight you because you're on television. He's like, Portland's such a horrible city. It's like people are just, you know, they want to fight you.
That's just his way of trolling Danger Aaron. You must know Aaron. The Aaron, I love that dude. That's my unofficial mayor of Portland after you.
Yeah, I've never, you know, broke bread with him, but I know who he is.
You did. You smoked weed with him one time. You, me, and him in the basement of Dante's, maybe. I'm blanking on where.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I tell you, it all comes together through the cannabis.
Yeah, yeah, better living.
It is it's a tough town. It's definitely a Portland's no joke. It's actually one thing I wanted to ask you about is and once again, this is something, if you don't want to talk about it, I can definitely cut out. But I remember after Tom died, you having quite quite an open beef with Jim Goad, talking about Washington and January 6th and all that stuff. He seems like he would have been a real kind of a storm cloud at times in Portland.
Yeah. I mean, Tom kind of hung out with that guy and stuff, and until I'm sitting in a room with somebody and can talk to them face to face and see get to the bottom of it, ask why. People can throw around accusations and rumors and shit and whatever, and you know what? You can never get to the truth of it. It's all just like rumors and whatever. But he I think he liked to instigate a bunch of shit, and it's what he did. Just ruffle feathers, and that's whatever. That's fine. He talked he talked shit about Tom, and there's supposedly, I haven't heard it yet, but the new Mr. Bungle record came out, and they dropped some shit about Tom and Chai Pig.
What?
Yeah. Talking about in some lyric, one of their songs, they say something about two deceased people about being drug addicts. So it's like,
wow,
and har. It's like, so you know what, guys, really, like, leave it at that. It's kind of the same thing. It's like, I think I've gone beyond that by now. So
that I had no idea about that. That is wild. But just in terms of Answer Me, it's interesting to look at the effects that has had. Talk about, like, Gavin McInnes is 100%. He's like a Jim Goat acolyte. Like, that's where he got that whole playbook from. And it's just sort of like this idea that you can put shit out in this world. You can talk shit. You can, play with things, and there's no consequences. And that's sort of this sort of, I think that's sort of like the worst side of that kind of comes out of the punk thing.
I think there is consequence. I think there is something.
Well, there definitely is consequences, definitely. But I mean, like, the idea that there's, they don't perceive there to be consequences.
Keep perceiving.
Yeah. Well, this has been unbelievable. And I got to say, anytime you want to come back on this podcast, Jerry, the door's always open. And Cooch, anytime you want to come back on this podcast too, the door's always open.
Hey, Damian.
Yes, Jerry.
Let me drop a quick thing really quick.
Yeah. Or I'm not rushing you off. Like, I was going to go to finishing moves now, but if you, please.
No, because I got two quick things. My band, Poison Idea, did a record some while ago with this place in Portland called Voodoo Donuts.
Yeah.
Right. So Trace, the owner, gave me a gold card where I can get donuts for life. Right. So tomorrow's 4th of July, and I have to be at this at Voodoo Donut tomorrow at 6:00 to get dozens of donuts to go give to my community, because I'm such an upstanding community member now. That's number one. And number two, I'm playing a show later this month in Portland and Dante, so I just wanted to plug that.
Oh, definitely. And I'm going to do plugs for the reissues and the book and everything. I do those wraparounds at the beginning of the podcast.
Oh, I did.
So I don't want to have to make you plug your own stuff. Don't worry. I'll be plugging, Cooch's store and his new book that he just put out with SSD and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, everything you're doing as well.
I thought you were kicking me off.
No, dude, no, do not worry. But I don't want to keep you. You got to get up at 6 a.m. to do this. I think it's. I want to say that it's like, I think one of the greatest things that I've gotten to experience from being a fan is getting to meet you and getting to know you and getting to see you in this sort of like other chapter of your life. Like, it's funny you bring up that story in Prague being this sort of like turning point, because I met you after that, and it's just it's been so cool to get to meet the guy that inspired me so much.
I'm glad that is when we met, because a year before that, you probably would have been picking your pocket or something,
Yeah, no, I remember going up to you at that show, because it was after a bunch of the Austin stuff and all that thing had gone down, and just being like, yo, I don't care about anything that happened in the past. You're the greatest singer of all time, and I'm very excited to see you play tonight. That was the first thing I ever said to you.
Well, hey, kudos. Yeah, it's the same. It's like you guys blew my mind, and we dedicated songs to you that night. It was like, I think it started a lifelong friendship that night.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate it. And Cooch, my friend, my record collecting god, my record collectors are my heroes, not pretentious assholes. I got to thank you for coming on, buddy.
Anytime. We should do it again. Remember when me, you, and Jonah, we were going to do the band Scum?
Yes.
Maybe that can just be like a episode of Turned Out a Punk.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.